The morning sun cast long shadows across the ancient forest that bordered the kingdom of Aldermore. Sarah Jenkins, a local botanist collecting rare herbs, never expected her routine expedition would uncover one of the most shocking discoveries in the kingdom's history. As she pushed through the thick undergrowth, her trained eye spotted something unusual glinting between the massive oak trees. What she found there would haunt her forever. Chained to an enormous oak tree, barely conscious and dressed in the tattered remains of what appeared to be royal guard armor, was a man she recognized immediately from the kingdom's missing person reports. Captain Marcus Thornfield, one of the kingdom's most decorated royal guards, had vanished without a trace 3 months earlier during a routine patrol. Sarah's hands trembled as she approached the barely breathing figure. The heavy iron chains that bound him to the tree were old and rusted, suggesting he had been there for an extended period. His once pristine uniform was torn and weathered, and his face bore the marks of someone who had endured unimaginable suffering. Yet despite his weakened state, his eyes still held the fierce determination that had made him legendary among the royal guard. The discovery sent shockwaves through the small village of Millbrook when Sarah rushed to alert the authorities. Captain Thornfield had been presumed dead after extensive search efforts yielded no results. His disappearance had devastated not only the royal court, but also his young daughter Emma, who had refused to believe her father was gone forever. The entire kingdom had mourned the loss of a man who had dedicated his life to protecting others. As the village constable and local physician hurried to the forest, word spread like wildfire through the community. Captain Thornfield had been more than just a royal guard to these people. He had grown up in their village, learned to fight in their training grounds, and had always returned to help during times of trouble. His disappearance had left a void that no one could fill. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, the village's respected physician, was the first medical professional to reach the scene. What she found defied all logical explanation. Despite being chained to a tree for what appeared to be months, Captain Thornfield showed signs of having been cared for by someone. His wounds, while numerous, had been treated with forest herbs and natural remedies. Someone had been keeping him alive, but the question remained: who, and more importantly, why? The rescue operation required careful planning. The chains that bound Captain Thornfield were unlike anything the local blacksmith had ever seen. They appeared to be forged from a metal that resisted conventional tools, and their intricate design suggested they had been crafted for a specific purpose. As the rescue team worked to free him, Captain Thornfield drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally mumbling words that no one could quite understand. When they finally managed to break through the chains using specialized equipment brought from the kingdom's capital, Captain Thornfield collapsed into Dr. Morrison's arms. His first coherent words sent chills through everyone present. "The children. I had to protect the children." No one understood what he meant, but the desperation in his voice made it clear that his story was far from over. As they carefully transported him back to the village, the rescued guard clutched something tightly in his hand. It was a small, intricately carved wooden figure of a dragon, worn smooth by countless hours of handling. Dr. Morrison recognized it immediately. It was the type of toy commonly given to children in the mountain villages that bordered the dark forest beyond the kingdom. This small clue would prove to be the key to understanding the extraordinary tale that was about to unfold. The news of Captain Thornfield's rescue spread throughout the kingdom within hours. King Aldrich himself dispatched his finest healers and investigators to the small village, demanding answers about how one of his most trusted guards had survived alone in the wilderness for so long. But as Captain Thornfield began his slow recovery, it became clear that he had not been alone at all, and the truth behind his disappearance would challenge everything everyone thought they knew about the forbidden forests and the mysteries they held. 3 days after his rescue, Captain Thornfield finally regained enough strength to speak coherently. Dr. Morrison sat beside his bed in the village infirmary, carefully documenting every word as the decorated guard slowly revealed the truth behind his mysterious disappearance. What he told her would forever change how the kingdom viewed the dark forests that lay beyond their borders. It had started as a routine patrol along the kingdom's eastern border, Captain Thornfield explained, his voice still weak but determined. He had been investigating reports of strange lights and unusual sounds coming from the forbidden forest when he discovered something that horrified him to his core. Deep within the woods, hidden in a cave system that had been forgotten by maps and memory, he found a group of 12 children, all between the ages of 6 and 12, being held captive by a group of forest bandits. The children, he learned, had been kidnapped from various mountain villages over the course of several months. The bandits were not common criminals seeking ransom money. Instead, they were part of an ancient cult that believed the children possessed special abilities that could be harvested through dark rituals. Captain Thornfield's discovery of their hideout had disrupted their plans and put all the children's lives in immediate danger. Rather than retreat to get reinforcements, knowing the children would likely be killed or moved before he could return, Captain Thornfield made a decision that would cost him his freedom, but save 12 innocent lives. He allowed himself to be captured, claiming he was alone and had stumbled upon their camp by accident. The bandits, led by a cruel man known only as Raven, were suspicious but ultimately decided to keep the Royal Guard alive as a potential bargaining chip with the kingdom. Dr. Morrison listened in amazement as Captain Thornfield described the elaborate deception he had maintained for months. He convinced his captors that he was valuable enough to keep alive, while secretly working to gain the trust of the frightened children. During the long nights when the bandits slept, he would comfort the children, teach them survival skills, and plan their eventual escape. The wooden dragon figure he had clutched during his rescue belonged to a little girl named Luna, the youngest of the captives. She had carved it herself using a small knife Captain Thornfield had smuggled to the children, disguised as kindling for their fires. Luna had given it to him as a symbol of hope, promising that dragons were protectors and would watch over him, even when she could not. The escape plan Captain Thornfield devised was both brilliant and heartbreaking. He realized that the only way to save all 12 children was to create a diversion so significant that every bandit in the camp would be forced to pursue it, leaving the children with a clear path to freedom. He spent weeks teaching the oldest children, 2 brothers named Thomas and William, how to navigate by the stars and find their way back to civilization. On the night of the escape, Captain Thornfield broke free from his bonds and created chaos in the bandit camp, setting fires and destroying their supplies while the children slipped away into the darkness. But his plan required him to be recaptured to maintain the illusion that the children's escape was accidental, rather than orchestrated. He allowed the bandits to chain him to the great oak tree as punishment, knowing that the children's head start was worth his freedom. For weeks after the children's escape, Captain Thornfield endured terrible conditions, sustained only by the hope that the children had made it to safety. The bandits, furious at losing their captives, took out their anger on their remaining prisoner. But even as his strength faded and his hope dimmed, he never revealed the truth about his role in the children's escape. What Captain Thornfield did not know during those dark months was that his sacrifice had indeed paid off. The children had not only reached safety, but had also led rescue teams back toward the forest in search of their protector. However, by the time the authorities reached the bandit camp, it had been abandoned, and there was no trace of where Captain Thornfield had been taken. The bandits had moved deeper into the forest, dragging their prisoner with them and eventually chaining him to the oak tree where Sarah Jenkins would find him months later. But even in his weakened state, Captain Thornfield had never lost faith that his sacrifice had meaning. The wooden dragon in his hand served as a daily reminder that sometimes the greatest victories require the greatest personal costs. As Dr. Morrison finished recording his account, she realized that Captain Thornfield's story was far from over. The 12 children he had saved were still out there somewhere, and their testimonies would be crucial in bringing the remaining bandits to justice. More importantly, they would be able to confirm the extraordinary heroism of a man who had given up everything to protect those who could not protect themselves. The kingdom's investigators, led by Sir Geoffrey Blackwood, wasted no time in following up on Captain Thornfield's account. Within hours of hearing his story, mounted patrols were dispatched to every mountain village within a 3-day ride of the forest where he had been found. Their mission was to locate the 12 children and verify the incredible tale of sacrifice and heroism that had stunned even the most experienced members of the Royal Guard. The first breakthrough came from The village of Stonehaven, nestled high in the Windspear Mountains. Village elder Margaret Clearwater immediately recognized the descriptions provided by the investigators. Two brothers, Thomas and William Ashford, had indeed arrived in her village 4 months earlier, exhausted and traumatized, leading a group of 10 other children ranging in age from 6 to 14. The children had been delirious with hunger and fear, speaking frantically about a brave guard who had saved them from terrible danger. Margaret led the investigators to a modest cottage on the village outskirts where the children had been staying, with various foster families. The reunion between the children and news of Captain Thornfield's rescue brought tears to the eyes of even the most hardened soldiers. Little Luna, now 8 years old and much healthier than when she had carved the wooden dragon, broke down sobbing when she learned that her protector had survived. Thomas Ashford, now 13 and clearly the leader among the rescued children, provided investigators with details that corroborated every aspect of Captain Thornfield's story. He described how the captain had taught them to recognize edible plants, how to move silently through the forest, and most importantly, how to never give up hope even in the darkest circumstances. The boy's admiration for his rescuer was evident in every word he spoke. The children's accounts painted a picture of systematic cruelty at the hands of their captors, but also of the extraordinary courage displayed by Captain Thornfield throughout their ordeal. They described how he would comfort them during the long, frightening nights, telling them stories of brave knights and promising that they would all return home safely. Even when the bandits punished him for minor infractions, he never let the children see his pain or despair. Young William Ashford, still only 10 years old, had kept a detailed journal of their captivity using charcoal on strips of bark that Captain Thornfield had secretly provided. His childish handwriting recorded not only the daily horrors they endured, but also the small acts of kindness and hope that their guardian had provided. One entry, dated 3 days before their escape, simply read, "The captain says we are going home soon. He promised, and the captain never breaks his promises." Dr. Helena Fairfax, the kingdom's most respected child psychologist, was brought in to evaluate the rescued children's mental state and to help them process their traumatic experiences. She found that despite the terrible ordeal they had endured, the children showed remarkable resilience and emotional stability. She attributed this largely to the protective presence and positive influence of Captain Thornfield during their darkest hours. The investigators also discovered that the children's rescue had sparked a kingdom-wide effort to locate other missing persons from the mountain regions. Over the past year, 17 children and young adults had vanished without explanation from remote villages. The testimony of the 12 rescued children provided crucial information about the bandits' methods and possible locations of other hidden camps throughout the forbidden forests. Luna, the smallest of the rescued children, had formed the strongest bond with Captain Thornfield during their captivity. She told investigators how he had taught her to carve the wooden dragon, explaining that dragons were ancient protectors who watched over those who could not protect themselves. She had made the figure specifically for him, she said, because he was the bravest dragon she had ever known. The emotional impact of the children's testimonies extended far beyond their immediate families. Word of their rescue, and Captain Thornfield's sacrifice spread throughout the kingdom, inspiring songs, stories, and artwork celebrating their courage. Bards began composing ballads about the guard who gave up his freedom to save 12 innocent lives. And children throughout the realm began playing games where they pretended to be brave knights rescuing captives from evil bandits. King Aldrich himself traveled to Stonehaven to meet with the rescued children and their families. The sight of the monarch kneeling to speak with little Luna, listening intently as she explained the significance of her wooden dragon, became one of the most iconic images in the kingdom's recent history. The king declared that the 12 children would forever be known as the Thornfield 12, honoring both their courage and their protector's sacrifice. As the investigation continued, it became clear that Captain Thornfield's heroism had prevented not just the immediate harm to these 12 children, but had also disrupted a much larger criminal operation. The bandit cult had been operating for years, and their defeat represented a significant victory for justice throughout the region. However, the investigators knew that their work was far from finished. and that bringing the remaining cultists to justice would require all the information they could gather from both the rescued children and their guardian. As Captain Thornfield's strength slowly returned under Dr. Morrison's careful treatment, a second shock awaited the kingdom. Emma Thornfield, the captain's 15-year-old daughter, arrived in Millbrook accompanied by her Uncle Robert and her father's closest friend, Lieutenant Commander James Sterling. The reunion between father and daughter became a moment that would be remembered throughout the kingdom for generations to come. Emma had spent the 3 months of her father's disappearance refusing to accept that he was dead. While others had given up hope, she had continued to organize search parties, study maps of the forbidden forests, and interview every traveler who passed through the region. Her unwavering faith in her father's survival had sustained not only herself, but also many others who had loved and respected Captain Thornfield. The moment Emma entered the infirmary and saw her father, still weak but unmistakably alive, both burst into tears that seemed to wash away months of fear and uncertainty. Captain Thornfield, who had endured torture and imprisonment with stoic courage, broke down completely as he held his daughter for the first time in over 3 months. The hardened soldiers who witnessed the reunion reported that there was not a dry eye among them. Emma brought with her a leather satchel containing letters and drawings that the people of the kingdom had sent to support the Thornfield family during their darkest hours. Children had drawn pictures of brave knights. Elderly citizens had shared stories of Captain Thornfield's past heroic deeds, and fellow guards had written testimonials to his character and courage. The outpouring of love and support had sustained Emma through her father's absence and now served as proof of how deeply he was valued by those he had sworn to protect. Lieutenant Commander Sterling provided Captain Thornfield with updates on the kingdom's efforts to track down the remaining bandits. The information gathered from the rescued children had led to the discovery of 3 more camps hidden deep in the forbidden forests. 2 had been abandoned, but the 3rd had yielded crucial evidence about the cult's operations and leadership structure. The mysterious figure known as Raven remained at large, but his network was rapidly being dismantled. Dr. Morrison marveled at how quickly Captain Thornfield's recovery accelerated once Emma arrived. The reunion seemed to provide him with strength that no medicine could offer. Within days, he was walking around the infirmary, and within a week, he was insisting on participating in the ongoing investigation. Despite protests from medical staff and family members alike, the captain's detailed knowledge of the bandit camps proved invaluable to the investigators. He was able to provide precise descriptions of the cult's rituals, their methods of moving through the forest undetected, and most importantly, their recruiting practices. The cult specifically targeted children from remote mountain villages because they were less likely to be missed quickly, and because the isolation of their communities made rescue operations more difficult. Emma revealed that during her father's absence, she had been working closely with the families of other missing persons from the mountain regions. Her research had uncovered patterns that the official investigators had missed, and her maps and notes contained information that proved crucial to understanding the full scope of the cult's activities. Her dedication and intelligence impressed even the most experienced members of the investigation team. The reunion also brought to light another dimension of Captain Thornfield's sacrifice. Emma explained that before his disappearance, her father had been planning to retire from active duty to spend more time with his family. He had already submitted his paperwork and was training his replacement when he took on what was supposed to be his final patrol mission. His capture had not only cost him his freedom, but had also delayed the peaceful retirement he had earned after decades of faithful service. As word of the father-daughter reunion spread throughout the kingdom, it became a symbol of hope for other families dealing with missing loved ones. The image of Captain Thornfield and Emma embracing became the subject of paintings and sculptures, representing the unbreakable bonds of family love and the power of faith to sustain people through their darkest trials. The Thornfield 12, as the rescued children had come to be known, began making regular visits to see their protector as he recovered. These visits became cherished moments for both Captain Thornfield and the children, reinforcing the bonds forged during their shared ordeal. Luna, in particular, would spend hours sitting beside his bed, teaching him new wood-carving techniques, and sharing stories about her life in Stonehaven. King Aldrich announced his intention to personally honor Captain Thornfield with the kingdom's highest award for valor, the Crown of Courage. which had been bestowed only 12 times in the kingdom's 500-year history. The ceremony would take place once the captain had fully recovered, and the remaining bandits had been brought to justice. However, those closest to Captain Thornfield knew that the greatest reward he could receive was already sitting beside his bed, holding his hand and planning their future together. The investigation team realized that Emma's research and her father's first-hand knowledge, combined with the testimonies of the rescued children, had provided them with everything they needed to launch a final, decisive campaign against the remaining cult members. The stage was set for a confrontation that would bring justice not only for the Thornfield 12, but for all the victims of the Forest Bandits' cruelty. The final confrontation with the Forest cult came sooner than anyone expected. Just 2 weeks after Captain Thornfield's rescue, scouts reported suspicious activity in the deepest part of the Forbidden Forest, near an ancient ruin known as the Shadow Keep. Intelligence gathered from the rescued children and the captain's detailed accounts had led investigators to believe this was where Raven, the cult leader, had retreated with his remaining followers. Captain Thornfield, against the strong protests of Dr. Morrison and his daughter Emma, insisted on joining the expedition. His intimate knowledge of the cult's tactics in the forest terrain made him invaluable to the mission's success, but his weakened physical condition posed significant risks. A compromise was reached where he would serve as an advisor and guide, but would not participate directly in any combat operations. The rescue force consisted of 50 of the kingdom's elite guards, led by Sir Geoffrey Blackwood and Lieutenant Commander Sterling. They were accompanied by tracking experts from the mountain villages, including Thomas Ashford's older brother Marcus, who had become an expert tracker during the months spent searching for the missing children. The expedition also included Dr. Morrison, who insisted on being present in case they discovered more captives in need of immediate medical attention. As they ventured deeper into the Forbidden Forest than any official expedition had gone in living memory, Captain Thornfield shared stories of the months he had spent as a prisoner. He described the cult's bizarre beliefs about harvesting supernatural abilities from children, their elaborate rituals conducted under the full moon, and their absolute devotion to Raven, who claimed to possess prophetic powers. The approach to Shadowkeep required 3 days of careful navigation through treacherous terrain. Captain Thornfield's guidance proved invaluable, as he led them around hidden traps and through secret passages that the cult had used to move undetected for years. His knowledge of their patrol patterns and defensive positions allowed the rescue force to advance without alerting their targets to the approaching danger. On the morning of the 4th day, the expedition discovered something that made Captain Thornfield's blood run cold. Fresh tracks around the ancient ruins indicated that the cult had recently acquired new captives. Smoke rising from cooking fires suggested that Raven and his followers were actively occupying the Shadow Keep, and the possibility that new victims were being held there transformed the mission from a pursuit into an urgent rescue operation. The assault on Shadowkeep was swift and decisive. Sir Geoffrey's forces surrounded the ruins at dawn, using tactical knowledge provided by Captain Thornfield to seal off all escape routes. The element of surprise was complete, and the remaining cult members, numbering only about 20, were overwhelmed before they could mount any significant resistance. Inside the ruins, the rescue team made a discovery that validated every risk they had taken. 7 children, ranging in age from 7 to 13, were found locked in underground chambers beneath the keep. They had been recently captured and showed signs of the same treatment that the Thornfield 12 had endured. Captain Thornfield's presence during their rescue proved crucial, as the terrified children immediately recognized him from descriptions provided by the other survivors. The capture of Raven himself was almost anticlimactic. The cult leader revealed to be a former royal advisor named Aldwyn Blackthorn, who had been exiled from the kingdom 15 years earlier for practicing forbidden magic, offered no resistance when confronted. His claims of supernatural power evaporated in the face of overwhelming force, and he was taken into custody along with his remaining followers. Among the evidence seized at Shadow Keep were detailed records of the cult's activities spanning nearly a decade. These documents revealed that over 100 children had been kidnapped over the years, with many more victims than had previously been suspected. The records also contained maps of other locations throughout the kingdom, where similar operations might have been conducted. suggesting that the threat extended far beyond the forbidden forest. The rescued children from Shadowkeep were in better condition than the Thornfield 12 had been, largely because their captivity had lasted only weeks rather than months. However, they displayed the same trauma symptoms that Dr. Morrison and Dr. Fairfax had observed in the other survivors. The children's recovery would require extensive support, but their rescue prevented them from enduring the prolonged suffering that Captain Thornfield had sacrificed so much to spare the earlier victims. Captain Thornfield's role in the successful mission was acknowledged by every member of the expedition. His willingness to return to the place of his torment, despite his physical weakness and emotional trauma, demonstrated a level of courage that impressed even his most experienced colleagues. Sir Geoffrey reported to King Aldrich that the mission's success was directly attributable to the captain's expertise and bravery. The news of Raven's capture and the rescue of 7 additional children spread throughout the kingdom like wildfire. Church bells rang in celebration, and spontaneous festivals broke out in villages throughout the mountain regions. Parents who had lived in fear for their children's safety finally felt secure, knowing that the forest cult that had terrorized their communities for so long had been completely dismantled. As the expedition prepared to return to civilization with their prisoners and the rescued children, Captain Thornfield stood once more at the edge of the forbidden forest. This time, however, he was not alone and chained to a tree. He was surrounded by friends, family, and the children whose lives he had saved through his sacrifice. The transformation from victim to hero was complete, but the full impact of his courage was only beginning to be understood by the kingdom he had served so faithfully. 6 months after Captain Thornfield's rescue, the kingdom of Aldermore gathered for the most significant ceremony in its recent history. The great hall of the royal castle had been transformed for the occasion, with banners representing every village and region where the cult's victims had originated. King Aldrich himself would present Captain Thornfield with the Crown of Courage, but the ceremony had grown far beyond a simple award presentation into a celebration of hope, sacrifice, and the unbreakable human spirit. The 19 children who had been rescued through Captain Thornfield's actions were given places of honor at the ceremony. The Thornfield 12 sat alongside the 7 children rescued from Shadowkeep, all wearing new clothes provided by grateful citizens from across the kingdom. Luna, now 9 years old and thriving in her new home, carried a special gift she had spent months creating. A wooden sculpture of a knight protecting a group of children, carved with skills Captain Thornfield had taught her during their darkest hours. Emma Thornfield, now recognized throughout the kingdom for her crucial role in the investigation, served as one of the ceremony's primary speakers. Her research and unwavering faith in her father's survival had not only helped rescue the children, but had also inspired a new generation of young people to pursue careers in law enforcement and child protection. Several universities had already offered her scholarships to study criminal investigation and psychology. The ceremony began with testimonials from each of the rescued children. Their words, spoken with courage that belied their young ages, painted a picture of Captain Thornfield's character that no official commendation could capture. Thomas Ashford, now 14 and displaying remarkable poise, described how the captain had taught them that true strength came not from physical power, but from the willingness to sacrifice for others. His younger brother William, clutching the journal he had kept during captivity, read selected entries that brought tears to the eyes of everyone present. Dr. Morrison presented her medical findings about Captain Thornfield's condition during his captivity. Despite months of deprivation and abuse, he had maintained his physical strength through exercises designed to keep him ready for the children's escape attempt. Her analysis revealed that his survival had been due not to luck, but to careful planning and an unbreakable will to complete his mission of protecting the innocent. King Aldrich's speech, before presenting the Crown of Courage, acknowledged that Captain Thornfield's actions had transcended normal concepts of duty and service. The king revealed that the captain's sacrifice had inspired new laws protecting children throughout the kingdom, including the establishment of specialized rescue units trained specifically to handle cases involving missing minors. These Thornfield units would ensure that future victims would not suffer, as long as the forest cult's captives had. The presentation of the Crown of Courage itself was a moment of profound emotion. Captain Thornfield, still bearing visible scars from his ordeal but standing straight and proud in his dress uniform, accepted the honor on behalf of all those who had suffered at the hands of the forest cult. His acceptance speech was brief but powerful, emphasizing that the true heroes were the children who had survived their ordeal with courage and dignity intact. The ceremony's most moving moment came when Luna presented Captain Thornfield with her wooden sculpture. The piece depicted a knight in armor standing protectively over a group of children, with a dragon carved into his shield, symbolizing the protective spirit that watched over them all. The sculpture would later be displayed in the Royal Museum, as a testament to the bond between protector and protected that had sustained them through their darkest trial. Following the formal ceremony, a festival was held in the capital city's main square. Citizens from throughout the kingdom had gathered to celebrate not just Captain Thornfield's heroism, but also the collective effort that had brought justice to the forest cult's victims. Food stalls donated by merchants, performances by traveling entertainers, and games for children created an atmosphere of joy and community that lasted well into the night. The long-term impact of Captain Thornfield's story extended far beyond the borders of Aldermore. Neighboring kingdoms sent delegations to study the rescue techniques and investigation methods that had been developed during the campaign against the forest cult. The Millbrook model of community-based investigation, which had been pioneered by Emma Thornfield's research efforts, became a standard practice for handling missing person cases throughout the region. Captain Thornfield himself chose to remain in active service rather than retire. But his role shifted from field operations to training new guards in protection tactics and child rescue techniques. His experiences during captivity had given him unique insights into the psychology of both victims and criminals, making him invaluable in preparing the next generation of protectors. The wooden dragon that Luna had carved for Captain Thornfield became a symbol of hope throughout the kingdom. Replicas were carved and sold to raise funds for the families of missing persons, and the image appeared on everything from coins to tapestries. The dragon represented the idea that protection and hope could survive even in the darkest circumstances, a lesson that would inspire the people of Aldermore for generations to come. Years later, when bards sang songs about the royal guard who sacrificed his freedom to save 19 children, they would always end with the same refrain. In the darkest forest where hope seems lost, a guardian's heart burns brightest of all. Captain Thornfield's legacy was not just in the lives he had saved, but in the proof he had provided that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things when they chose to put others before themselves. The tears shed at his rescue had been just the beginning of a story that would inspire courage and compassion throughout the kingdom for all time.